so tired? Actually, it was sort of a not exactly a rhetorical question. I'm wondering how many of us find ourselves asking a similar question. Is this a question that resonates?
Yeah.
Or is there anyone here who's like, I have all the energy, I'm always ready, lots of tiredness? Yeah. If nothing else sinks in through this Dharma talk, I want to urge each of you to keep asking yourself that question. Right? To take that question, why am I so tired, up as what we Zenis sometimes call a koan. You know, one of these kind of mysterious little nubbins of words. Yeah, nubbin, that's the technical sense. Words or questions, puzzles, what's the sound of one hand, that sort of thing. Why am I so tired? Taking that up as a koan. So last night, as some of you know, I was doing a shift at the hospital. I was on call, and I usually spend the night there because it's like, you know, I'm too nervous and Nelly to go home in case the phone rings. So I'd rather just be at the hospital. And I was, of course, working on my Dharma talk. And I was sitting there feeling really sleepy in a hospital conference room, trying to pull my thoughts together, hoping the house phone wouldn't ring. And then I hear an overhead page. And then I hear another overhead page. And then I hear another overhead page. And these are all for traumas. And I'm like, holy cow, heavy sigh. And then the house phone rings. And I go into the emergency room, and my tiredness is gone. My sleepiness is gone. I'm not at all tired. I'm just doing the thing. Okay? One moment to the next, clumsily, stupidly, misguidedly, but not tiredly, right? Just doing the thing. One moment sort of flows into the next. So, you know, this, he passed away a couple of years ago, but the Hungarian-American psychologist, I'm going to pause here on his name, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. You know, have you seen this name? And then it's like you have to keep looking up Csikszentmihalyi. He wrote a book called Flow, super famous book, 1970s. He's like one of the great pioneers of what's called positive psychology. And he described, which now has become completely in our popular understanding, this notion of a flow state, right? A state of challenge and activity, but which is nonetheless also characterized by a kind of sense of immersion and absorption and being caught up. It's called flow state because people tend to describe it as like being carried on a current of activity, one moment to the next. Often it can feel highly pleasurable, often associated with creative tasks, with a sense of heightened productivity. I wouldn't necessarily say that was what my chaplain was like last night, but that sense of one moment flowing into the next. And what he says about this, Csikszentmihalyi says about this flow state, he says it's about being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away. I'm quoting him here. The ego falls away, time flies, every action, movement, and thought flows inevitably. At least it feels like it follows and flows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved, and you're using your skills to the utmost. Have people tasted this state? Right? It's actually fairly common, as it turns out. Maybe not as a continuous way of being, but it's a fairly common state, each moment flowing into the next. And as he describes it, what he's describing is what psychologists also call, as I understand it, intrinsic motivation, the sense of an activity that we're doing for its own sake. That's a key part of the definition. Not because there's an external reward, which there might be, but that's not what is motivating us in that moment. We're not aware of an extrinsic motivation, right? We're not aware of doing this for a reward or for the avoidance of punishment. We're not aware of that kind of extrinsic thing. So it's a sense of optimal, intrinsic, inward motivation. We're caught up in the activity itself and challenged by it, a sense of kind of firing on all cylinders. I have a nephew who's a really good, I can't cook at all, so I'm super, even more impressed by the fact that my nephew Alex is such an amazing chef, and he's a professional chef, and it's what he would describe as the 4-burner moment. He loved being in the kitchen in a kind of busy restaurant, running the food, that 4-burner moment. Flow is also what the poet Rainer Maria Rilke describes in his poem, The Swan. I want to share, it's not a long poem, I want to share it with you. I'll probably read it twice, as is my wont, The Swan. So this is a translation that's kind of me tinkering around, looking at a bunch of translations, sort of rough flies. But I don't like a few things about his translation, and I get to change it because, my name Myobun means inconceivable letters, so I get to play with that. So this is the poem, The Swan. This laboring of ours, pressing forward through the still undone, heavy and hindered as though bound by rope. It's just like the clumsy gait of the swan. And dying, this end of further hold on that ground on which we stand from day to day, just like the swan's anxious lowering himself down into the waters which receive him gently, and which, as though subsiding in delight, draw back beneath him wave after wave, while he, unendingly silent and secure, each moment more mature and kingly, each moment more serenely deigns to glide. The swan, this laboring of ours, pressing forward through the still undone, right? Those tasks that we got to do, pressing forward, laboring, heavy and hindered as though bound by rope. It's just like the clumsy gait of the swan walking on land. And dying, the act of dying, this end of further hold on that ground on which we stand from day to day, that's just like the swan's anxious lowering himself down into the waters which receive him gently, and which, as though subsiding in delight, those waters draw back beneath him wave after wave, while he, unendingly silent and secure, each moment more mature, more confident, more kingly, each moment more serenely deigns to glide. It's a beautiful image, isn't it? The swan lowering itself down into the water, finding that grace, which initially is kind of terrifying to lower yourself into the dark water, finding that grace and then living into it, as if I will deign on your waters to glide like a king, right? Beautiful image. And yet I'm really, like, my life is almost entirely the waddling swan, right? Pulling myself through life as if bound by a rope. But let's be real here, right? Who's pulling this rope? It's me, isn't it? I'm pulling my own damn rope. So why am I so tired? There's sleep deprivation, there's allergies, there's pollen, the spores have us, right? There's all sorts of reasons that I can bring forward, and they're all important and valid. And don't not look for reasons, but this koan, why am I so tired? Why do those conditions arise that lead to me being so tired? It's my life, isn't it? Right? Isn't it? I'm pulling myself along this. Now, in the days before memes were meme, in the days before the memes were meme, right? There was a meme of these commercials. I think this is 70s, 80s for the Dunkin' Donuts. Do people remember the Dunkin' Donut guy? Mm-hmm. Does anyone else remember the Dunkin' Donut? Yes. YouTube it, folks. YouTube it. That's where we go for our memes now. Okay, so the Dunkin' Donut, these commercials where I think they were supposed to demonstrate that Dunkin' Donuts always has really fresh donuts. So they show this kind of schlubby guy, and he's asleep, and the alarm goes off, and he's like, time to make the donuts, right? And time to make the donuts, yes, Evelyn. So, for years, that's the refrain in my head. The alarm goes off. It's time to sit zazen. Time to make the donuts. Yeah. That is so much what my experience is. I hope this resonates. I'm not the only one talking about that. But that you get this, right? This sense of time to, and it's for that reason, as I had many a moment, many a morning, pulled my sorry ass up out of bed, and like sat myself down to sit some zazen, and then what happens? I become the Zen happy bird, right? Falling asleep. Anyone else can relate to this? Falling asleep on the cushion. Okay, so if that is a moment in your life that you recognize, take heart, because no less a disciple of the Buddha than Moggallana, who was, along with Shariputra, one of the two earliest disciples of the Buddha, one of the greatest of the Buddha's disciple, and who became famous in years afterwards because of his incredible psychic abilities. So Moggallana is the subject of a sutra called the Nodding-Off Sutta. Okay, the Pachalyamana Sutra. There is actually a sutra about what to do when you're falling asleep as you're meditating. And so here's the story. Moggallana, this is before his great realization, but he's been practicing with the Buddha. He's an arhat at this point, basically. Moggallana is trying to sit zazen, and it's nighttime, or early morning, same difference, and he's trying to sit in meditation, and he's falling asleep. And the Buddha, with his divine eye, clarified by his Buddhahood, miles and miles away, sees that Moggallana is falling asleep, and then magically appears right in front of Moggallana. Okay, now picture this. You're sitting there, and suddenly, not just any old teacher, but the Buddha is right there in front of you, and the Buddha says to Moggallana, "Are you falling asleep?" It sort of reminded me of, I don't know if you guys were here last assembly, when Oja-san, in the middle of our sitting meditation, started giving some guidance about sitting meditation. It's like that moment, like, oh, there's the teacher's voice. Oh, I'm not asleep now. And the Buddha says to Moggallana, if you're falling asleep, here are some tips. So he gives them 8 tips about how to deal with that tiredness. The tips are important. I mean, they're helpful, but they're also important for what they point to. So the first thing he says is, when you're falling asleep, when you're feeling drowsy, become mindful of the thing you were just thinking about, the perception that was just arising in your mind, and stop dwelling upon it. So you find yourself being drowsy. What was the moment preceding that drowsiness? Deep psychological wisdom here, right? That often our sense of fatigue is because the thing that we have just brought forth, or that has just arisen in us, not something we want to be hanging around with. So the Buddha says, what were you thinking about? Stop thinking about it. Very practical. That's a Tathagata, very practical teacher. He says, if that doesn't work, try calling to mind all of the Dharma you've learned and memorized. Just start thinking about the Dharma, thinking about what you know to be true and wholesome. And if that doesn't work, try reciting it out loud. So just start reciting sutras. Avalokiteshvara, when deeply practicing prajna, just bring the word forth, bring the teaching forth. And if that doesn't work, try pulling on your earlobes, he said, and rubbing your limbs. Try bringing some life back into your body. Where are you? Come back here. Come on, come back into this bag of flesh and bones. And if that doesn't work, get up and wash your eyes. And then lean up and look at the stars and the constellation. Look all around you. So you've gotten back in your body. Now look, feel this world around you. And if that doesn't work, he's talking to Moblana during the nighttime meditation. Try bringing forward into mind the perception of light. Remember the light that actually fills this world, although we can't see it right now. And if that doesn't work, try walking meditation. Get up and move. And if that doesn't work, I mean, think that this is the Buddha. It's like, okay, now we're on number 8. He says, if that doesn't work, lie down, go to sleep. He says lie down in a specific way, lion's pose. If you've ever seen those icons of the Buddha in Parinibbana, where he's lying on his right side and he's propped up, like and his legs are right on top of each other. Don't get comfortable. Like don't just sink into the drowsiness, but allow yourself to sleep. And here's, I think, one of the most beautiful parts of this. It's a very short sutra. It's like 3 pages long. Beautiful part of it where he says, as you are falling asleep, bring to mind the intention that you will wake up. Call to mind the intention of being awake. And then wake up. So, why am I so tired? The Buddha says, call to mind your intention. Intention is what wakes us up. It's not just the intention to wake up, it's the intention that is waking up. Intention, you might also use the word vow, is what pulls us out of bed. Time to make the freaking donuts. Now, a more resonant image for me, but one that also dates me, is Trinity in the first Matrix movie. People seen the Matrix? I think I don't know how many Dharma talks and classes I've been both Matrix. And in fact, the very first extended retreat I went on to, a 10-day Vipassana retreat, I did not know what I was getting into. I did not look at the schedule. I just went to Dhammapunja in Washington State, and then I got there and I was, oh, we're sitting meditation for 10 hours a day. Oops. Okay. And how did I spend my time on the cushion? How did I not fall asleep? I had not, of course, encountered the sutra, and I hadn't really encountered the Dharma. How did I spent my time thinking about Keanu Reeves movies. No lie. I was planning to write a book called Keanu Reeves is God. So I think I was dealing with the Dharma. So the Matrix, right? There's this scene early on where the character Trinity is in the computer simulated world. We don't really know yet what that world is. And maybe we do, I can't recall. And she's being chased by the evil agents, right? And she ends up at the bottom of a flight of stairs. And she's got her guns like this, and she's lying on the floor at the bottom of the flight of stairs. And she says, "Get up, Trinity." And she gets up and goes on to fight and escape. That's being pulled forward, right? Being compelled to wake up, to live, to keep going, to keep fighting, right? I don't know why that image was so resonant, but there's something about that kind of get up, Trinity. Work with the fear, work with the exhaustion, get up, get up, get up. And contrary to her, or in contrast to her, is the Judas figure in that film, the character Cypher, played by Joe Pantoliano, a great character actor. He says he is about to give away, to give up. He's a Judas figure, the Keanu Reeves figure, Neo. And he knows that we're in this land of slumber, in this matrix land. He's woken up, but he wants to go back to sleep. He wants to just be re-implanted. If you've never seen the movie, this probably doesn't make any sense. Are you guys with me, though, more or less? He wants to be re-implanted back in delusion. And he says to the bad guy, he says, as he's eating a steak in a simulated computer restaurant, he says, I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss. So, red pill, or do we go back to sleep? So, what is that get up, Trinity? I mean, that's intention. It's our intention to wake up. But here's the rub, right? So we are beings of karma and history and physical stuffness. in a world where one moment to the next, what draws us forward is not intention. It's just the routinized movement of our karma, of our reactivity, of our patterns, of our habits, of everything that has come before, and will just keep cycling over and over and over again. That's what pulls us forward moment by moment, typically. And yet, you guys are all here on a beautiful Sunday morning because there's this other thing, this intention, this desire to wake up, that is also pulling. So on the one hand, the momentum, the inertia, the karma, the habit energy. We are beings of karma. And yet you all are sitting here because we're also beings of intention, beings of vow. Right? So you want to slumber. You love the juicy steak or the delicious donut or whatever it is. But you also, get up, Trinity. Time to make the donuts, right? There's also that. What if the state of exhaustion is actually the gap between those two things? This like the lumbering gate of karma, the bottomless waters of intention, the gap between the two. Does this make sense? Mm-hmm. Maybe another way to say it is that our tiredness is not our karma. Our tiredness is not our sleeping. Our tiredness is the gap we experience between our karma and our vow and our intention. Our tiredness is an expression of that gap. Do you mean I really have to get up again? Ugh. Really? Really? Why is it so hard? Why do I have to keep doing this? Ugh. Really? So the Rilke poem, although I love Rilke and have read Rilke, I didn't know that poem before I encountered it through the contemporary poet David White, essayist David White, who talks about it in a variety of places, but in one of his books. And it's when he talks about it, he calls forth this saying that I think is super powerful. He says, the antidote to exhaustion is not necessarily rest. The antidote to exhaustion is wholeheartedness. Maybe what we're seeking is not more rest. Maybe this is why things like vacation weekends don't actually replenish us, because it's not that we need, I mean, sometimes they do. Yay when they do. But it's not that we need more sleep, although yes, we need more sleep, everybody. We all need more sleep. But it's not that we need more sleep because we get more sleep and then we recreate conditions where we don't get enough sleep because time to make the donuts. Wow. So maybe the antidote to exhaustion is not rest, not what we think we're craving, but wholeheartedness, this other thing that is even deeper than what we crave. And we're exhausted because we're not yet wholehearted. We're not living yet wholeheartedly. We don't yet know what that kind of living even maybe looks like. And here we come to another version of the koan, which isn't why am I so tired, but how would I get to be wholehearted? What's that? In the book where David White brings forward the Rilke poem and that sentiment about living more wholeheartedly, he is describing a shift in his own life from a kind of good career that was, on paper at least, should have been satisfying, but he was just exhausted with it, and his emerging intention to just be writing poetry. And so for him to lower himself down like the swan into the waters was for him to lower himself into that essential work of his heart, like just dive into. But as someone, literally me, Myobun, who has, left different careers in order to lower myself into more authentic waters, I'm still tired. Why is that? Well, I've spent a fair amount of time thinking about burnout in healthcare and education. And one of the reasons we might not be so wholehearted is because It's not that we haven't let ourselves down into the work that is our heart's work, but that we have been let down by the waters, or that's what it feels like, that we're brokenhearted, that we can't get wholehearted because we're heartbroken. So I want to come back to our drowsy Moggallana in this context of being heartbroken. So Moggallana is also one of the reasons we celebrate Sagaki. So in this temple, Hojo-san will often share with us the beautiful story of Ananda, who is visited by the Gaki, by this hungry ghost, who says, you're going to, blazing mouth, like the king of all the hungry ghosts, who says, you're going to die in 3 days and you're going to end up in the realm of the hungry ghosts. And Ananda's like, holy cow, what do I do now? And he goes to the Buddha, and the Buddha says, the only way to work with this is to feed all beings. And you can only feed all beings through the Dharma, through Dharanas. And so that's one origin story for Sagaki. Another origin story, very similar, is about Moggallana. Now, Moggallana isn't just the guy who's falling asleep. He's also the guy who dreams. So Moggallana has these terrible dreams where he's visited by his dead mother. And his dead mother is a hungry ghost. And she's incredibly full of suffering. And Moggallana is haunted by these dream visions of his dead, suffering mother. And he goes to the Buddha and he says, what do I do for my mother? And the Buddha says, you can't feed the hungry ghosts without these Dharanis, and here they are. So it's another origin story for the Sagaki festival of the hungry ghosts we celebrate here around Halloween every year, which is also focusing on the movement of compassion, right? How do we help others to heal our own brokenness? But in the story of Moggallana, this is tied to his deep karma. Because not only does Moggallana have stuff with his recently deceased mother, but it turns out in a past life, Moggallana killed his parents. And in fact, Moggallana lives to be 84 and then dies because he's murdered by bandits. The legend that is told about Moggallana's death is that is because in his past life, he's working through the karma of the past killing of his parents in the past. Now, wherever we stand with these legendary stories, these myths, whether we take them as mythology or we take them as metaphor, or whatever, there's something super interesting about karma and remorse and suffering and guilt and heartbreak. The stuff that comes up to us in our dreams, the stuff that comes up to us when we fall asleep. The stuff that might also be some of those thoughts that make us fall asleep when they come up to us in our day-to-day life. And we're like, oh, not that. So I don't know what to do with Moggallana. Only what I want to say is, don't be afraid of the dreams. Don't be afraid of the drowsiness. And an encouragement to allow ourselves to recognize this movement of compassion for that karma body, that karma heart, that weight upon us, that ungainly, clumsy, burden gait of the awkward swan. I don't know for certain, but I'm banking on the idea that the healing of heartbreak can't just come from the movement of vow pulling us out of bed. It has to also come from the movement of faith settling back into that world of our dreams. Okay, that's what I've got for this morning. Questions, comments, koans. How about you guys? You've got some time to explore this. Yeah,
I think you underplay the value of rest.
Oh,
I think it actually is really important. We need to know when to stop. We do.
Yes.
And I think that's really, because especially in this modern world, we've got like this ever-growing to-do list, and we're trying to pack more and more into a day, and all that kind of stuff. We need to know when is it enough? When have we done enough in a day? So I think rest is super important. And I'm not saying like check out, kind of run. Okay, mindful rest, if you will, or skillful rest, if you will. It's important to rest. It's important to stop.
So did you hear me saying don't rest? Because that's
I heard you say I maybe you applied it. Maybe not don't rest, but that it wasn't as important as this other stuff.
No, this is the movement of self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
What I've experienced in my own life is that no matter how much I intend to nourish this body, I keep recreating the conditions.
Correct.
Right.
And
so,
rest is a piece of undoing that.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing would be the koan for me feels like more like not why do I feel so tired, but how do I hold my tiredness? How am I doing that?
Yeah.
Am I holding it apart from me and making it like, oh, this is bad. I'm so tired. Oh my God, I'm so exhausted. And maybe there's a lot of reasons why. Obviously, like you said, some very good reasons why. But do I make it a thing that I wrestle with?
Yeah.
Or just kind of go, I'm tired and it's time to stop. And not worry about why so much. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So just some additional exploration there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of tacking on a little bit to what you just said. What I was hearing you say as well was that there's only so much that we can do wholeheartedly, because I think that we live in a culture where there's perfectionism and there's overachievement that is normalized and reified. I mean, that's like the ideal of what we should be doing, and I think it automatically leads to that burnout because there's only so much that we should be able to do wholeheartedly. Like I think our hearts, it feels to me like our hearts have a capacity to take on so much and not more. So maybe resting is resting from that overachievement.
So the invitation here is to take up this question, because what I hear often when I talk about tiredness and rest is people feeling like, how do I do it? It's how is the culture pushing me? How am I pushing myself? And so it's really for me this active question about how are we working with the being we are and this other sense that there's something that is what it would be like to be like a swan. What it would be like to live a wholehearted life. How do we do that? It's clearly if living a wholehearted life were like a time management issue, there are enough books out there that will tell you how to manage your time, right? So how do we live wholeheartedly? Yeah.
Can I interrupt you?
No, please.
Well, having worked through different times in my life of with tiredness or with no sleep or sleep, I also, before I go in and say what I want to say, I really thank you for this notion of wholeheartedness. And I like being reminded of it. And I think that we can practice even moment to moment. You go to the store. I've been doing this lately, on the lows, I'm impatient, I'm hot. I have to get back to where I need to take whatever it is I'm buying. It's doing the work. And I write a long thing, and this is so I think so. But actually, these things, if we stop and remember, can be wholehearted. How I treat that poor person is figure out how to do. I can either be frustrated or I can say this poor person versus working for us doing the best she can. And so those are just little moments that sometimes I can remember to be there, that person, whatever that is. But the other thing I want to say is that I think part of what we're all experiencing is the fragmentation. We live very fragmented lives. And in one day, and I'm not even working situations. Someone on the phone, someone supervising, something I need to do, that person that's coming to work outside, and I need to go do with them. Like when some granddaughter calls, I mean, this is not an unusual thing, right? Like what I'm describing is common. And the people who are working full time, there are people who got up all night with the baby and have to go teach the next day. So we have this, I think, maybe we have an account for what we've slowly let happen to us. And I also think, somebody already mentioned this about, there's such a connection of self-esteem and self-worth with how much we can do. How, when you say, oh, listening and seeing how you're doing, whoever wants to say, gee whiz, life has been really calm and peaceful, and my calendar's been really comfortable and not too crowded. Who says that? Who feels okay about saying it? So I ponder a lot of this because, as I know, I also think it has to do with death. Well, absolutely death, because we're going to die. And so the sense is, will we have done what we wanted to do? How much time is there? How will I feel at that point?
So this is,
So I don't think we're talking about that enough.
no. And so,
So anyway, that's it. I just said thank you for letting me say my speech.
yeah, so just again, an encouragement, like, don't try to answer this question completely. Like, this is a really important, like, why are we so tired? Yeah.
Right.
I have to tell you that sometimes tiredness is tiredness. And I also stress myself by getting everything done. I know I can do this. I have a very busy life and I do a lot. And I told a few friends here. Weeks ago, I was feeling so tired, which makes me feel depressed because I know I can do this. I'm that kind of person. And why am I feeling like this? Why am I being tired? And all of a sudden I said to myself, you're going to be 87, stupid. It worked.
So there's another version of this talk where I talk all about our understanding of energy, which seems kind of crazy in this culture, as if somehow we've got like this fire burning in our belly and we're just going to expend this energy as if it's not tied to mortality and to all of life. Yeah.
I just think it's interesting that you were able to talk about all that without the word reluctance,
Yeah.
because I feel like how I was understanding it was that, like, inversely, reluctance is exhausting. Like when we're not into what we're doing, when it's not with our full heart, when we're going to a job that feels empty, it's exhausting. That's the kind of waking up where you don't want to go make the donuts. So you're like, no, someone else make the donuts. And then I had this image in my head. I remember being a kid, and I think, a lot of times we're doing something that we like and we feel like we're really enjoying it, and we still can get tired and end up going, okay, it's time to go. Like you might have a lot of fun bowling, but at a certain point it's like, okay, I'm gonna go home and go to bed. But I was thinking about the phenomena of like being young and having a sleepover. I don't know if any of you have had the privilege of doing that, but we're having friends visit from out of town or something, and you just can stay up talking and being together and have no idea how much time is going by, and you're so energized. And oh my God, it's like 3 a.m. and we need to go to bed. Like, how did that even happen? And so that's kind of the feel I was thinking about, more like thinking about our reluctancy, or like how effortless doing things that we love that do fill our hearts can be.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reluctance, resistance, resentment. Yeah. All of these things. And how do we find our way home? Yeah.
Well, and I'm finding too that it's there's many different tiredness. What is it that's making you tired? And what my journey right now is grief, and it is learning to carry what can't be fixed. And to me, that's been probably the biggest journey of my life. I have not been in a situation in which I haven't been able to fix it, or at least have some idea to fix it. And so now it's being left with how to carry what I can't fix. And so that exhaustion is pretty turbulent. And how do I balance that with it not being a choice?
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. This is the thing about that David White quote, which I think is a sort of, is beautiful, but is actually, I think, a little poisonous. Because it's like, oh, just find the thing that you love and you won't be exhausted. And this goes to what you're saying with reluctance. We can't just let ourselves down into the water. We're like, okay, I'm in the flow, because so many of us are heartbroken in all sorts of ways. The stuff you're describing on you, just like we try to do too much or rhyme. And then jobs that suck, a world that's broken, the truth of loss, the truth of mortality. This is where I say, pay attention to the tiredness and let it be the question. We're not going to fix it. I mean, I can pull my earlobes, and I certainly need more sleep than I get. But there's heartache there. Moggallana grieving his mother and also feeling guilty and also carrying the weight of the generations. So allowing ourselves to be with that being that needs rest, along with the being that needs inspiration. And I think there's going to be sweets. So we need to be with that being.